Earth is it?
It's a SpaceX launch. Was a SpaceX launch. That's like the fumes or whatever, the emissions from the rocket.
Hi guys, welcome back. Well, I'm back in my closet, but I have a really good reason to be back in here. As you can see, this closet has been changing rapidly. I've been working on this thing for 5 very long months, and I need to give you a little bit of an explanation on this closet. My husband grew up on Long Island for the most part. Started out in the Bronx, then he moved to Jamaica. His grandparents had a house on Long Island in Elmont. That house was in the family, I think going back to his great grandparents. So his great grandparents sold it to his grandparents, who sold it to his parents, and then my husband moved into it. They all moved down to Florida eventually. They would just go and they would just leave their things in the house. Well, back when my husband's parents had the house, they were getting ready to move down to Florida. In fact, the week that they sold the house, my mother-in-law had a heart attack and passed away. She was a bit of a pack rat. We had no time because we didn't expect the house to sell so fast. It was a nice house. And it sold immediately. And the house was not packed up. They had multi-generational things in that house because nobody ever took their stuff out. They just picked up and left. When my mother-in-law passed away, we only had like 2 weeks to pack this house up, and that included doing the funeral, packing the house up, and getting my father-in-law and my brother-in-law down to Florida, where they bought a condo. It involved a lot of just throwing things into boxes and taking things that were already in boxes from generations previously and not really going through the house and saying yes, no, yes, no. I remember we had bins and bins of stuff that we just threw out and like quickly looked and tossed and looked and tossed. And to top it all off, I was pregnant at the time. I wasn't that much of a total help. I did what I could, but we made it through those 2 weeks. And a lot of the stuff was not going to be going with my father-in-law down to Florida because he just didn't have the room in the condo to put all this stuff. So we put it in my garage and we were going to go through it slowly. Well, you know what happens when stuff goes into a garage. And we never went through the boxes for 15 years. When we finally moved from New York, Las Vegas after 15 years from getting those boxes, I never went through the boxes. So they went from Elmont to Merrick, from Merrick to Nevada. We just packed it up and we said, you know what? We'll just put it on the moving van. And when the moving van people got here, they brought these boxes and put them in this back storage room. And of course, my husband and I said, okay, we're going to go through them. And we never did. So now my husband is gone and I had this entire room filled boxes and boxes. I never had a closet up there for my stuff. All just family stuff. This is a big step for me, having cleaned this place out. And if you've noticed, I've gotten rid of a lot of the clothes. Well, I can't say I got rid of them. I didn't get rid of them. I packed away a lot of my husband's clothes. I think it has a lot to do with my healing and being able to do it. So you could see I only have maybe about 50 t-shirts still in this closet now. There's at least 50, maybe more, because the closet goes that way and then it turns and goes that way. It's huge. I always said I can use this as a bedroom if I wanted to. Let me tell you, I found some pretty amazing things, but one of them is a mystery to me. I'm going to show you one of the things that I found that just blows my mind. This thing was hidden for all these years. So let's get started. I'm going to try to hold this as steady as I can, but the picture is too big for me to put it on a tripod and show it to you. So please bear with me until we get to the real find. So this picture is at least 100 years old. In my husband's house, he had like a two-family house. His parents and his brother lived upstairs in a full, house. Then they had a basement that was a full apartment. In fact, it had its own kitchen, a living room, bedroom. There used to be a bar down there and laundry and a bathroom. So that's when my husband lived by himself, like since he was a teenager. He took over the whole entire downstairs. It was actually a very cool thing to have as a young teen. He didn't use the kitchen. The kitchen was used for storage, and it was fairly a large kitchen. And my husband used to keep this, it wasn't a sheet, it was like a banner over the door. So you couldn't walk into the kitchen. And behind that banner was just boxes and boxes of probably really cool old stuff that I really wish I could have gone through, but it was just no time to do it. Now, I don't remember this picture having been hung in my mother in law's house. In fact, I don't even remember this picture at all. This was among the boxes that we had saved. When we were packing things up, we just wanted to make sure we got the photos out. Everything else got tossed because we couldn't possibly take all that stuff. Multi-generational. This picture is at least 100 years old, packed in a box that was, who knows how long it was packed in my mother-in-law's house. Then it was in my garage in this box that was untouched for 15 years. And then it was in this house for at least 15 years. So we're talking about a box that's probably 40 to 50 years old at least. It could have been older. And this was a picture that's at least 100 years old. I left the dust on it. This is the original dust that came here because I never opened the box. So this is dust that's like minimal 45 years old, 50 years old, that's covering this picture. So when I took it out of the box that it was in, I had put it in a like the box was in a plastic bin, so it wasn't really like foul smelling or anything like that. They were packed to move from Merrick to Nevada. I put everything in plastic bins. And this is exactly the way it came out of this old paper box that was falling apart, that was in this plastic bin. So I decided to take a better look, and just uncovering the dust that's on here, you could see, wasn't enough. I needed to be able to take it out of the frame. So I undid the back, and you'll see it's exactly the way I found it. And there was glass. Now, I was being very, very careful because this photograph is so old. And I was afraid that the picture was going to be stuck on the glass, but it wasn't. It just lifted off. I don't want it to crack. And you can see why I think this picture is over 100 years. I'm almost positive it's over 100 years old. Just from the way the child looks, the quality of the picture itself. At first we weren't sure if it was actually a photograph or a drawing, but it is a photograph, but that's the way photography was. Given the style of the clothing, and look at that bicycle and the hat that's on this child's head, you can just see where the age of the picture is. I wanted to get this picture restored because it's somebody from my husband's history. It could be his great-grandfather as a child. It looks like it's very, very early photography, so I haven't done much research on it. I have to send this picture out. There's not very many people who would know this face. I haven't found anything that resembles him. Like, I'm trying to look at the family resemblance, and I don't recognize his eyes. I know it was my husband's mother's side, but I don't recognize the face that it could possibly even have been my husband's grandfather. I don't think it was. I think it was older than that. I don't think this was taken in the United States. I'm pretty sure because my husband's grandfather was not born here. He was born in Russia or Poland, something like that. I have to dig out his birth certificate. So This is the picture. Now, this is where it got crazy. When I lifted this picture up, I found something underneath. It's a watercolor. Now, I immediately got the feeling like it was French, and there is some French history in my husband's side of the family, and I immediately went to the signature, and that was very clear of who did this. This is an original watercolor. This is not a print. So this is original. It's mounted very loosely on the board, and you can just see the yellowing around the edges of the board. This was very well hidden. I don't know who hid this picture or why. It may have been when they were coming here. I believe it was from Russia during the World War II, because we have a Jewish history, and that's when a lot of the Jews came from World War II, moving away from Europe to get away from Hitler. And it is not uncommon for people who were moving to get away to hide their artwork. This picture is bright. The colors, there was no fading on this. I love the cloud work that it did, the loose interpretation of the lines. So I decided to do a little research on Cabrera, and apparently he's quite a sought-after artist. So under this is the board from the frame. I did some research on the internet for Charles Grobel, and I found out that he's an early modernist, and that's kind of obvious with his pictures. If you don't know what a modernist is they were the anti-realism movement. They went more off their memory and their imagination than they were to actual places. Picture itself gave off a French feel, and I did find out that he studied in France. He was born in 1902. He passed away in 1994. He lived in Paris in the 1920s, and I believe he moved to Connecticut in the 1940s, and that's where he ended up living and dying. If you look him up, you can find little tidbits about his life. And some interesting things about him is that he was a private student of Marc Chagall's. His mentor was Raoul Duffy. Those were very, very popular modernists, and that lived during that time. Of course, Chagall was much earlier than Charles Grobel. He must have been older when he took Charles on as a student. When he got to the United States and he bought his place in Connecticut, it was around the 1950s that he became very popular. And he was noted for his acrylic modernist pictures of France. And he was very big in gouache. Now, when I was looking at the picture, it looked like watercolor, but darker, so that's gouache. So I'm pretty sure that this was gouache that he used on this painting. It really didn't feel like a watercolor paper, but I don't know what the paper was like back then. If it was just a mixed media paper, this doesn't feel exceptionally thick. It feels just like a regular sketch, paper that you would sketch on. The opacity of the paints looks more like gouache. Around 1965, there was a big fire at his studio, and it destroyed most of his early works. His later works, he used to sign his name different. It was like Cia Grobel. I don't think I have an early work of his, but I don't have a late one. So I'm going to guess it's going to correlate around the time the house was built and my family moved into the house in Elmont. Well, how it ended up behind the 100-year-old photograph, I'm never going to know. I wanted to see what this picture might be worth. I took it down to the pawn shop where they film porn stars. I've been there before. I knew that they have some popular new pop art up on the walls, but they're not big on like a regular art gallery would be. So we went down there and they were not able to tell us anything about it. But the funny thing is that we met up with somebody who we know and they recommended a few places that I did contact, and those places told me that his lithographs are anywhere between $30 and $1,000, and that's just for his prints. Now, his original watercolors, gouache, and paintings, they run anywhere between $1,000 and $7,000, which I think that's a pretty good find for something that I didn't even know was in my home up until a couple of weeks ago. And what am I going to do with this painting? Absolutely nothing. I'm going to frame it. I'm going to frame it behind UV glass because it is gouache and watercolor, and that has a tendency of fading. This picture has been in total darkness for 70 years, whatever. It's been behind this picture. That's why it kept its colors, and I don't want to take any chances with it. So I'm going to have it professionally matted and put behind UV glass. So when I get that done, I'll be sure to show you guys. With that, I will say goodnight, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.